Welcome to the lABLEd podcast, a show about disability, illness and difference. I'm Lucy.
And I'm Alice. And that's Lola.
Kaleidoscope identity, and this is who I'm meant to be. I'm just labeled me. I'm just labeled me.
Don't forget, in this episode, I might swear, Lucy might cry, and you can check out details of the trigger warnings on our website. Hello.
Hi.
We're back.
Just when you thought it was safe.
This is our first episode of our first season.
Yeah.
Which is quite a big deal. I'm Alice, for those of you who don't know, and that's Lucy.
Hi. Hello.
And we also have somebody else with us who you may be familiar with. If not, then what is it? Forewarned is forearmed.
Yeah.
Our favourite disabled historian, Daisy Holder, is here.
Yay!
Yeah, Daisy's back. We couldn't really start the series off without anybody else, really, could we, to be fair?
No, definitely. It's very exciting to be back.
Very
We
exciting.
we didn't end the last sort of the 100th episode on Daisy, but we did give Daisy their very own bonus section.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Which was a lot of fun to put together. So if
Thank
you
you,
haven't
it's very
met Daisy
touching.
before, if you haven't met Daisy before and you would like a bit more Daisy, go back and listen to that bonus piece for our 100th episode. It will be on our website, and it's great. So that's what you've got to look forward to for the next nominal amount of time.
Yes.
How is everyone?
I'm very well, sort of. I think I'm here in body at least. Haven't managed to injure myself in the time we have stopped recording. We had a break from recording. Fell out my chair a few times. Ordered a new wheelchair, not because I fell out of it, but yeah, I'm okay. I think I'm okay. How are you, Alice? All right?
Yeah, I am okay. I'm tired.
Yeah.
And regularly just generally a bit under the weather because I have a toddler who puts everything in his mouth. And then literally the other day just put his fingers in my mouth to see what was going on in there. So
Well, why not, huh?
Yes.
What was going on in there out of interest?
Nothing. I made the mistake of making eye contact with him in a reasonably close proximity.
Well, do you know what makes me laugh, Alice? The fact is that we went on a break because we were tired and nearly burnt out. And you've just gone, I'm okay. I'm tired. Still
I'm
tired.
nearly burnt out.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I am getting the distinct impression from other people that I speak to that this may just be being a parent. And I now look at my parents with a real sort of new insight into like, you had no idea what you were doing and you were just fucking exhausted the whole time.
Yeah.
And we're just hoping that I wouldn't die in between the next time I fell asleep.
Yeah.
That's just
I think,
parenting.
yeah. That's going to be your new book. But Daisy's here with us for a very special reason this week, aren't you, Daisy? Daisy, do you want to tell everybody what you've been up to whilst we've been on our little sabbatical away from the podcast? Because it puts me and Alice to shame.
Well, if it helps, I've done it over an extended period of time. I didn't just do it during this little break. It wasn't like I haven't been able to come and speak through a microphone for sort of 2 hours at a time. I guess I'd better write all of this down into a book and get it out there.
So
But yeah, I wrote a book.
Yeah, she wrote a book. She's dead
Yay.
clever. Dead clever.
Oh, you can't say you haven't read it yet. It might be nonsense.
I mean,
No, it's
I've
not
done.
though, is it? I mean,
Well, I don't know. I've done enough history lessons with Daisy to know that there is a reasonable amount of nonsense involved,
mhm.
but that's part of the joy.
Yeah, a bit of nonsense. I'm pretty sure all of it is in sentences.
Yeah. Some history, some nonsense.
Is there
Sounds like
any
a pretty good
bugles
balance.
involved?
Oh, is there a bugle involved? I don't think so.
Could I suggest that be like bonus video content that people can access on a VR
Second edition.
on a VR code, like just Daisy playing the bugle?
No, instead there is feature something called a banquet, which is just like a big thing of water that you stand in and electrocute it a bit, and then maybe
Oh.
you're cured.
Oh, that
Oh,
sounds.
well, had you been talking? Have you talked about magnets and getting in the bath with magnets?
I have that is a feature.
Favorite topic
Yeah.
of the podcast, not of me.
Yep, mesmerism is a factor. Because it's a book on queer and disabled history, so it's a lot of points where those two types of history kind of cross over in ways that you wouldn't necessarily expect.
Well, and I think one of the things we did establish was about Mesmer was that his thing was like, hey, let me give you a magnet and my penis, even if you don't want it. So feels like, there was bound to be people of a variety of genders who were like, no, thank you.
Yeah, so this thing, when it's not even actually focusing on him, that
No.
chapter is so basically we're following individual people who were both queer and disabled, or as far as we can tell, both queer and disabled.
Yeah.
And so that chapter is actually following Harriet Martineau,
Who you
we did.
covered
we
on
have
the
mentioned
show.
before. Yes.
Yeah.
She also lived in Bristol for a bit, where I am based.
Yeah, I remember.
So that's nice. Yeah, and because all of her the mesmerism that she really liked is kind of the basis of modern day hypnosis. That chapter also covers conversion therapies and things like that. It's that that bit's maybe not quite so funny, but there's the whole bit about him being run out of Paris, which is more interesting. Mesmer, that is.
Yeah. And just to confirm, nobody put Harriet in a bath and electrocuted her?
No, it was magnets.
No, she was more with the magnets and the individual person kind of, waving their hands over her body and going, woo.
In the bath.
Yeah.
Cool.
I can't remember if she was in a bath. It might say in the book.
Well, yeah, I would imagine that it would be like, relax, float away in the water, and I'll just stick these magnets in, I imagine. I wasn't there, I don't know.
I assume they have like special magnets that they use and not like, your novelty seaside magnets that you pick up when you go on holiday and, the Mickey Mouse head that you got when you went to
science
Disney.
class, is it?
I imagine it being those kind of magnets that always show up in like cartoons and things, like the U-shaped.
The U-shaped
Yeah,
one
yeah.
that's like red on
Yeah,
one
yeah,
side.
In the Tom and Jerry cartoons.
Yeah. Because I mean, the magnets were relatively normal. It was the making them drink bits of metal so that they could feel it moving around that was a bit more strange.
That is a bit weird, isn't it?
Well,
Very odd.
but people in history loved making people drink things
Yes,
that then turn out to be poisonous.
I don't know. I wouldn't say it's a historical thing. Have you seen the moss, the drinky, sludgy moss thing that
what are you talking about?
Oh, those kind of
Sludgy
green
moss?
drinks. Yeah, they're weird. But I mean, they're not mercury, are they?
No,
but that's only because there are like food and drug laws now.
I do have what I call gut juice first thing in the morning. That is like I mix it with apple juice because it tastes like pond and it looks like pond water when you're drinking it, but it does me good. It does do something to me that makes me feel better. So I just like take a shot of apple juice every morning.
Do you know what I find? If I drink enough of it does me good and makes me feel better.
What?
Gin.
Yeah. Also rum.
Doesn't fix my disability,
No.
but I feel a damn sight better.
I do call Captain Morgan, Doctor Captain Morgan in my house because it's like everything's ready to have a rum. It's fine. You're all right. Yeah. So Daisy, who would you say was the most interesting? Your favorite person that you've covered it? I don't want you to go to like
This feels
a
like you're
list.
about to ask Daisy to like name, like pick of
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
their children to
I
be
mean,
like, who's your
give me
favorite person in your
give
book?
me give me a top 3. I don't know, 3 like that you really enjoyed writing about. Were there people that you didn't know much about that you've actually discovered, like since because you started writing about them? Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Or were they all people that you knew about and were like, I'll put this in the book?
Yeah, so most of them were people that I was kind of familiar with, but maybe I didn't necessarily, know their life stories, very, in a very detailed way. It's like, Connie Panzerino was one of those. So there was a photo of her on my disability history snapshots Instagram page that actually got me temporarily banned from Instagram.
Wow.
Because it's her at a protest. It's Boston Pride, holding up a sign that says "Traked dykes eat pussy without coming up for air."
Amazing. Okay.
And Instagram's like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see why the people behind Facebook were not like, yeah, this is fine.
How long did that get you
Freedom of
banned?
speech.
How long did that get you banned for?
Not very long at the end, because they
Okay.
lifted the ban once I appealed it, but it was a couple of days. It was a couple of days, and then of course, because my account had been banned, nobody knew where to find it again. So then a bunch of other people were getting my credit.
Yes,
for finding thing.
Of course.
But yeah, her life was really interesting, and she wrote a book about her life, which made my job much easier.
Yes,
and there's just so many gems in there, like talking about her urinary behaviour and being the poster girl for muscular dystrophy, even though she didn't have muscular dystrophy.
How does that work?
I mean, I imagine it's the non-disabled people. Just
No, it was the Muscular Dystrophy Association. This was in America, I should point out, not the Muscular Dystrophy UK charity that we would be familiar with. But yeah, they determined that she looked a bit like she had muscular dystrophy, but all of the children, all of the children that they were kind of working with were kind of not physically strong enough for a photo shoot. And so rather than think of a different way of doing it or just dropping the entire poster child thing entirely, they just got a child and made her act as if she had muscular dystrophy.
So what was her actual disability?
She didn't know for years and years and years, but it seems to have been a form of spinal atrophy.
Right, okay.
But yeah, there's a couple of names that she has for it because she was told so many different things over, however many years. And I think she was kind of in her sort of 30s or 40s before they actually had a term for it.
A proper diagnosis.
Yeah. Wow. It was one of these things that just, the testing for it at the time didn't really exist.
What sort of era was this?
I should know that. It's like 60s, 70s.
Okay.
Yeah. Something like
Have
that.
You got a book you can look this up in?
Yeah. I think I don't even have a copy of it myself yet, so I can't just look it up. But yeah, no, this is deliberate. I'm deliberately not giving you the facts. So
yeah, exactly. We've got to go and research it ourselves.
Yeah. No. Don't research it yourself. Buy the book and just read it in there.
Research yourself by buying your book.
Yeah, Google's not allowed.
No.
Unless you're Googling to find the book.
Yeah.
But we will tell everybody where they can find your book
What page
at the
number?
at the end of the episode, and we'll put links and everything. So,
We will.
don't panic. You know, we don't want people going out buying the wrong queer disability book. I'm
Yeah.
sure that, you know, it's like Harry Potter. It's probably millions and millions of them, and it's been like fan fictioned to nothing. It's not super niche. Like,
I'm not sure I would want to read fan fiction of my book.
Has it put you off writing another book, or would you write another book, or are there plans for another book? I don't want to.
yeah,
like,
how labor intensive was it?
Yeah.
Because obviously you've
I-
got, like, you know, your own disability to manage, and you've got a job like that.
Yeah,
It must have been a lot.
it was definitely very intensive. So I wrote over the course of a year. So yeah, essentially did it as one chapter a month, which felt very doable until I procrastinated up until nearly the last minute. And then it was much
And you
more
were like,
stressful.
I can't do anything. I can't go to Tesco. I need to get this book finished.
Yeah. Pretty
Yeah, yeah.
much. Just
Yeah.
I cannot leave the house
Yeah.
for a month.
That was very much my approach to my master's dissertation.
Yeah.
I was like, I could do 20,000 words. That's fine. And they were like, wait, what? I've got 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I just used to like use really descriptive like paragraphs to describe like bits of film that I'd seen. I was like, and it was really, 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 really atmospheric.
This is good because
Yeah.
unlike a lot of my you know, essays while I was studying, I'm interested in this stuff enough that, you know, I was just
Yeah.
like, no, I can't stop writing it. There's too many other things that I have to add
Yeah.
in. It's like,
Yeah,
I'll add
yeah.
another thing and another interesting thing I
Oh,
found.
by the way.
Was there anything that you didn't put in that you really wanted to put in, but you just had to cut it?
Well, there are a couple of things that were edited out for, I presume,
Length.
good reasons.
Yeah.
Because it was comments about tracheostomy lesbians.
Yeah, stuff of that ilk. Like,
Daisy's not writing a PG rated book.
No,
Daisy's very much
Daisy's not going to
18
be
and
on.
plus.
Daisy's not going to be on CBB's bedtime story.
No.
reading her excerpts
yeah,
from her new
not
book.
reading my own book anyway. I could read something else and just make comments about it throughout.
I don't think that's the purpose of bedtime stories is to make do a commentary on
I don't know.
another.
My mum used to do
Review.
it.
The very hungry caterpillar. Well, look at this greedy motherfucker.
He's not gonna get through that door. I don't know where
Yeah.
he's living. In doorways. I don't know. He's a caterpillar.
Why has it gone for another cake? It's left loads of the last one. It's just on a tiny hole all the way through it.
Yeah. Finish
Finish the one you got.
Amazing.
Ruin that for everyone.
Nobody can eat that now. It's like eating around. Yeah. I've never thought of it like that, actually, Daisy.
Yeah.
You've opened my eyes.
This is the kind of thing that bothered me as a child.
Says a lot about you as an adult.
Yeah. So do you think you would write a second book, maybe? Or have you got the bug for it now? Or do you think I might leave it a while? Will you be like Adele and like disappear for 7 years and then I'm back again with a book?
We've got a couple of authors on this season, actually. And
Yes,
I think
we have.
both of them said, like, that first one, I was like, oh, this nearly killed me. And then a few years later, I was like, I could go another book.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where once a certain amount of time has passed, I'll forget that it was stressful and I couldn't do anything for months at a time and all of that. And I'd be like, oh, this time maybe I would actually be organised and stick to the schedule that I made for myself.
Yeah.
And then I'm there in the last month again going,
I suppose as well, you've got to have an idea of, you can't just write a book for writing a book's sake, can you? You'll be like, and here's
there are millions of people who self-publish on the internet who believe otherwise.
But like anybody who is really serious about the stuff they want, you're not going to like just publish a book that's full of stuff I wouldn't anyway. If I was going to publish a book, I'd be like, this is a book and this is what I want to say. I'm not going to write another 4 because I still have, oh, by the way, like, I don't want it just to be like a sequel for the sake of it being a sequel. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, non-fiction books are a bit different kind of to the way that a lot of people would.
Not like it ends on a cliffhanger.
I mean more that, like, with fiction books, it's kind of expected that you write the book and you finish the book, and that's when you start, approaching like agents and publishers and things like that.
Yeah.
Whereas with non-fiction, it's generally, you kind of have the idea first and you find a agent, a publisher or whatever before you actually write it.
So it's like writing a pitch, really, and then going kind
of, yeah. And so the certainly in my case, and with I think probably a lot of other people as well, there's kind of a more specific idea of what the publisher wants before you start writing it.
Yeah.
So this came about because I wrote a magazine article about like shared queer and disabled history. And so, it was very much like, yes, we liked that. We would like more of it, to the tune of 200 pages.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if I was to write another one, it would probably be in a similar way, that it would kind of, a bit before the planning stages, really, there would be an idea of the type of subject that it would cover.
And I suppose it would come naturally as well, because it would be because you've either had experience of writing something and somebody go, I really like that, I want more of it. Do you think it would be down that similar sort of path of it sort of naturally, organically came about, rather than I have this idea, do you think it might be like a good book kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm not sure really, because one of the things I would quite like to do is just kind of like a general, disability history primer type thing. There's so many scattered sources about all of the different elements, and something that was just kind of like, this is a starter's guide to all of this stuff, I think would be quite good and quite helpful.
Yeah, I think so.
Did you go into this book like thinking I'm going to cover these people, or did you have to spend some time being like, right, I've got to do 12 chapters and I've only got 8 people?
Yeah, no, I had an idea of a couple of people, and I sort of thought about how I would lay it out and what sort of things that I would like to cover as the kind of subjects alongside the people. And then there was finding the historical people who were queer and disabled and figuring out how they fit into some of the topics I wanted to cover, and in a lot of cases thinking, reading about what they'd experienced and done, and being like, that's something that I could add in as well.
Talk about, yeah. There are so many people that I think about, oh, maybe I could cover these people for like a history lesson for the podcast or whatever, and then or somebody will tell me something about a person, I think that's fascinating, and then my next question is, were they disabled in any way, shape, or form? Can I shoehorn a disability onto them? Like, did they have like a slightly small index finger or something like that, just to make it fit? So was there like people that you maybe were researching and were like, yes, they're queer, but have they got a disability? No, they haven't. I've got to kind of like, or was it a case of they didn't have to be both? It could be one or the other.
Yeah, no, everyone is both, but there are some who have a rather more tenuous connection to it, because trying to either diagnose with an impairment or figure out the sexuality of people from the past is incredibly difficult, and
yes, of course.
There are likely to be cases where it's inaccurate for whatever reason. But yeah, the problem I found is that for a lot of these people, you had to search so hard and for so long to their disability or their impairment was just kind of something that was never mentioned, and so it would take you would actually have to do a really significant amount of research on each individual person, and then maybe it'd be like, oh, and they had arthritis.
Oh yeah.
Stuff
As
like
a
that, and it was like a tiny footnote somewhere that suddenly makes sense of everything they did, but just most people have just never mentioned it for whatever reason. So I mean, Harriet Martineau is one of those ones that has a slightly more tenuous connection to it, because she was never known to have had any kind of romantic relationships,
no.
but she had what were called romantic friendships and a very close relationship with her female mesmerist. And so some people have it's all speculation essentially.
Yeah.
There's if I didn't include people where there was some amount of explanation, there would be no one featured.
Is it a bit like when you tell us about somebody with a disability and you go, and in modern medicine this would be called such and such a condition or whatever? Is that the same sort of?
I mean, yeah. There's a lot of things where it's just they saw themselves as having like a slightly Daphne, and it's kind of later on you'd go, oh no, the exact way they've described it fits this thing, but there's no way of knowing for sure that's what it was. And realistically, a lot of these people wouldn't necessarily have considered themselves disabled, but we would consider them to have an impairment.
Yeah.
Well, it's very much about kind of the historical context, isn't it? I've as part of the series, both me and Lucy are doing fabled episodes, and I'm doing King Lear. And there isn't, at no point in King Lear does Shakespeare refer to, he talks a lot about aging and he talks a lot about him losing his mind. But there's a lot of modern readings that are suggesting that Lear probably had dementia. But it's that, there's Shakespeare doesn't say that.
No.
And particularly when it comes to kind of fictional characters like that, when you're imposing a diagnosis, can you impose a diagnosis on a character who's, the person who created them didn't see that diagnosis? Or are you pulling that diagnosis, that modern diagnosis, from what was a historical understanding of what that condition looked like and what that condition was, how people experienced it?
Yeah, there's things, so many of these descriptions just didn't exist at those points in the past, and so you wouldn't necessarily expect people to have an accurate reading of it at that time, even if, well, not an accurate reading of it, but they would never have assigned the terms that we would use because they didn't exist. And this is why disability history is so particularly difficult, is that if you only paid attention to people who had the descriptions that we would use today, then disability was invented in about 1910.
Yeah, exactly. And that is just not reasonable to believe that it only existed in 1910. It's that's just not possible, is it?
I've got two questions. I have one question and then like a follow-up question.
Sure.
So,
am I going to know the answers? Is this going to be embarrassing for me?
No, that's usually me that does that.
One of them is an answer that you should be able to give because you wrote the book, and the other one is an opinion.
Oh, okay.
So you have, I know that you have those because I've spent 5 minutes with you.
Yeah.
So, so the first question is, what is the kind of the furthest back? Who's the most ancient person that you cover in your book?
Michelangelo, I think.
Okay.
Oh wow,
that's cool.
Wow,
and
that is cool.
That is that like 15th century?
Maybe.
That's not my second question.
That's question 1A.
Yeah. Someone
a long time ago.
Someone Google it.
My second question is, in your opinion, if we're talking about what we were just saying about, understanding and definitions of disability, do you feel as though what we consider to be disability has kind of changed over time?
Yeah, absolutely. This is, one of my classic things in that disability history is kind of everywhere, going all the way back. It's just being disabled was a much more normal thing. It was much more common, and so nobody really noted it or paid attention to it because it was so common.
Yeah.
If you had an injury to your leg and you needed, some help to walk around, like that you wouldn't write that down anywhere because so did 8 other people who lived on the same street as you.
You wouldn't write down John's lost a leg on Thursday because it was quite common to have people with like one leg maybe walking around or something like that. It's not kind of like, oh, have you seen so and so with one leg?
It's kind of, if someone needed a stick or a crutch, they would make it themselves and go back to work the next day. If they needed some help at work, they would get a chair. They would just switch their job around until it worked for them.
Yeah.
And it just wouldn't have been such a big thing. This is why a lot of people just kind of seem to think that disability is more common now than it ever used to be. If anything, it's much less common now. It's just no one really cared that much about it.
I suppose there was no NHS or there's no welfare, so the onus was on you and your family, and depending on what your circumstances were, a disability could be catastrophic for your entire family if you were the breadwinner, and so if you couldn't find a way to keep working, then that was it.
Yeah, it's kind of arguably it became much more of a issue, well, certainly in this country, when the Industrial Revolution came and all of a sudden people's primary job was doing the same thing in exactly the same way over and over and over again. It became much more focused on repetitive actions and doing it exactly accurately.
Yeah.
It was when people's jobs were kind of more, like, it sounds simplistic to say kind of crafting and trading and things like that, but you see what I mean. Those types of jobs that are on a much more individual level.
It was a bit
just adapt around it.
Yeah, it was a bit more flexible, really, wasn't it? Being able to like crafting, selling, that kind of thing. It's a bit like working for yourself. Being self-employed, you can be a little bit more flexible in the hours you give to that job for whatever reason. That's why a lot of disabled people often find themselves in self-employment, because it works well for their condition. Whereas if you are reliant on a system where you have to go to a factory and stand on your feet for 18 hours a day or whatever it is, and there's no other way around it, then you're going to come a cropper if you can't manage to stand for that length of time to do those repetitive jobs.
Yeah, because they'll just get rid of you and replace you with someone else. Often people were kind of apprenticed into their careers. They did the same thing for years and years and years, and so they just adapted it to make it work. If you stopped being the town's baker, then oh Christ, who's going to bake our bread now? No, you build yourself a special bread stool and do it that way.
I suppose there's also a slightly sort of hard truth in that, like, if in 1247 your leg gets crushed by a falling tree, you're probably not gonna be around very much longer anyway.
Yeah, it very much depends. Yeah, there's a lot more disability that came as a result of kind of relatively minor illnesses as well. Just, result of smallpox or viruses or whatever.
I mean, even as recently as the 50s, Lucy talks about Ian Dury in this season, and he got polio and it left him, as my aunt described as we were talking about it not a week ago, just like, oh, and it crippled him, didn't it? And I was like, you can't. No, you
don't know. I was going through the transcript for that episode earlier today. There's a bit where I talk about Jeremy Beadle and his really small hand.
Oh, Jesus!
Like, oh yeah, I forgot I said that. As a kid, that was the only reference to polio I ever had.
Didn't we
then,
establish that he didn't have polio as
well,
well?
Daisy
No, I
googled
think
it
it
and
was
it was
something entirely
Poland
different.
syndrome. Yeah, I've never heard of Poland syndrome. I still think that's somebody who's misheard what's
I think
the.
it's more. I think I probably said this in the episode. I think it's more likely that you misheard.
I think actually reading the transcript, I think you did say that. Yes, cloth ears. Yeah, I just think disability history is fascinating, and also what I find really fascinating about the whole thing is when you realize that well-known people from history actually had a disability. So like people like Samuel Johnson, for instance, invented the dictionary. I didn't even like he's from where I live. I didn't even realize he was disabled until I was in the pub reading a sign on the wall. I was like, hang on a minute, what? He had a disability. That's really cool. I think that is for somebody who is disabled, reading things about famous people that you don't realize is disabled and then discovering that actually they had a impairment as well is quite an empowering thing to read, because you think, well, if they've managed to do that, I could perhaps do
And I
something
think
similar.
I'm pretty sure, Daisy, you mentioned Alan Turing,
Yes.
who I think is one of, like, regardless of disability or not, Alan Turing was like, there's just
Hero.
something a bit like whoa
Yeah,
about
yeah,
Alan
yeah.
Turing.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I do mention this a bit, but is it the Imitation Game?
Yeah, the film.
Yeah, that did him
Yeah.
dirty.
Yeah.
It portrayed him as this kind of like really like cold, unsociable, kind of, almost a bit of a jerk that you just sort of forgive because he was so brilliant. But
Yeah.
no, everybody loved him. Everyone in the office really liked him. He had so many character witnesses at his eventual trial for I can't remember exactly what the charge was, but for his homosexuality,
Yeah.
and all of them were just kind of like, we are not allowed to discuss where it was we worked together.
Yeah. Yeah.
But just know we wouldn't have won the war without him, and also he's great. You all suck. Screw the system. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I always, whenever somebody talks about, who was I talking to you recently? Somebody was talking about Bletchley Park, and my immediate thing is, most of the code breakers had like processing differences, because I think this is like, why are we not telling everybody? Why are we not shouting to the world? Like, how incredible is this, that these people who, like, schools will still be like, oh, this child is stupid because they're dyslexic.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
no.
Exactly. Yeah.
These people won the fucking war.
Hang on a minute. Reframe this.
Yeah.
And that's not even going into the significant proportion that were women.
Well, exactly. And this is a whole thing. Why, I mean, I know I tongue in cheek always say I really want to set up the British Museum of Disability, because I just think it's so cool. And I genuinely, legitimately have dreams about this, where we as a team, me, Alice, Daisy, everybody that works on the podcast, set up this museum, and Daisy runs the gift shop because she loves gift shops. I don't know where I've got that, but in my head, like, Daisy runs a gift.
I do like gift shops.
I was gonna say, I could see you in a gift shop.
Yeah.
You see, and I just think having something like that would be so beneficial for schools and young children growing up, to see people of difference, and that it's nothing to be frightened of or scared of or whatever, and to see the impact they made. I just think it's such a good thing to do.
A museum is one thing, and that's great, but like, I don't.
But I also like
Can
museums as well, so it's just me being a geek.
I feel like the way that we introduce children to how awesome disability and disability history is like, let's not spend 8 weeks in secondary school talking about how Churchill won the war.
No, exactly.
Let's talk about Bletchley Park
Yeah.
and Turing, and Like, if we insist on boring 14-year-olds to death talking about the war, like personally, I think the war is fascinating, but that's because I heard my nan talk about the fact that her 21st birthday she describes as being ruined by the Jerrys
Amazing.
because she lived in Brixton
Yeah.
and on her she was having her 21st birthday tea and a bomb came through their top front window and her mum and dad and their dog had to hide under the dining table.
This sounds like my grandma. She
It's
was always on about how Hitler stole her bicycle.
I think you've told this story on the show.
I mean, that is the great thing. I mean, my nan and granddad were born in 1939, so they could sort of like grow up like Second World War and all that kind of stuff. And whenever I had a project to do about the second, I'd just ring my nan and granddad up, and they'd save their ration book and stuff. They'd go to the library and photocopy it and say, "Here, you can have a copy of the ration book for your project and stuff." And it was just ace.
My mum is of a certain age that my mum was actually born while there was still rationing.
Really?
Yeah, they
Wow.
kept rationing until 53. And I won't tell you how old my mum is because I don't think she'll like it. But before that, in a
Before
period
that.
after the war, but yeah, before that, like.
But I
and I
think
just-
we're so lucky to be. I was so lucky to be able to have those conversations with people that were around at that time, and you can get like a real sense of what it was like. I think it's it's.
What do you think, Daisy? What sparked your interest in history? Like, do you remember the thing that you were like, this is cool. This is what I want to be. Like, I want to be in this space and know more about this stuff.
So the problem is, it doesn't make for a very good answer to the question. But I don't know. I don't know what it was in particular. I mean, I don't have a particularly great memory for that sort of period of my life anyway. But yeah, no, I mainly just sort of remember the point where I was like, choosing my GCSEs options and things like that, and just being like, oh well, obviously I have to do history.
Obviously,
so I must have known I liked it at that
subconsciously,
point.
like,
yeah,
I quite like that.
Yeah, I remember, knowing that I liked it and sort of like getting decent grades. But no, I don't know what it was that made me choose to study history at uni or what. I've got no idea what it was in particular. Like, part of me thinks that maybe I literally just chose it because I was getting good grades in it. Like, did I just like it because I was good at it?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Was there a certain, like, aside from, I mean, it could be just like, I mean, disability history is, like we mentioned, is over a whole spectrum of time. But was there like one period of time that you thought, I really like this, learning about this period of time whilst you were studying history, that made you go, actually, I really like this? Not necessarily disability wise, but just general periods.
I really liked all of the things that you don't typically learn at school. Like, I chose which like universities I applied for on the basis of the topics that you could study.
Right.
And so, BASBA had options for like the spread of Islam across the world, and the Middle East and China and Africa and all of those types of areas. Whereas there are a lot of the maybe traditionally more well-regarded places, like the red bricks, the Durhams and all of that, that were more just kind of like, hey, remember learning about the war? Would you like to do that again?
Yeah.
Would you like to do it for 4 years? Again?
4+1.
Yeah, and I was like, no, I want to do something else. Come on. Let me look at other places. Let me do witchcraft. I want to study witchcraft.
I watched a fascinating program about witchcraft the other day. It was fascinating. They did like witchcraft over here in England, and it was like Manchester and all that kind of place. And then the second episode was like witchcraft over in America, and I was like, this is fascinating. But again, that's something that I've never really looked into, and it's not because I'm not interested. It's just because nobody's told me, really. I mean, a lot of people, when they say, "Oh, I like history," and they'll follow it with, "I really like the Tudors." Well,
Yeah.
what a surprise!
Yeah, I very much like they're doing lots of different things. This is one of
Yeah.
the reasons why, you know, I was not traditionally, like, I was not suited for kind of further study, like, you know, PhDs or anything like that.
No.
'Cause it
No.
requires you to be incredibly specialist in a tiny element of a thing. And I like doing bits of everything from everywhere. That's why
Yeah.
disability history is so good, because it's technically a specialized area, but
Everything.
also it
Yeah,
covers
exactly.
everything and everywhere.
Yeah. What would you like
That's
me
my
to tell you
trick.
about today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Secretly, I'm actually just doing everything, but you'll never know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I do like what, because you're interested in history, Alice, aren't you? What was your like favorite area of to learn about? If you say the Tudors now, I'm gonna look right silly, aren't
So
I?
it is funny. So as I was asking Daisy my question, I was thinking, what was my like? I love history. So I don't know. I probably might have mentioned this on the show before. I have this is an overshare. I have constipative IBS, and I have since I was quite young.
Mhm.
When I'm in periods of stress where
Mm.
I have a lot of pain and I can't leave the bathroom for extended periods of time. And so I used to read I have really, really vivid memories of my sight being good enough that I could read print books, of reading all the horrible history books.
Yeah.
So when you say horrible histories to me, like
Yeah.
Greg Jenner's great, but I think Terry Deary and I think those books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have
also.
a really, really vivid memory of reading the Tudors one, and Henry VIII makes some comment about how much he hates Anne Boleyn, where he's like, I would throttle her with my hands, and if you took my hands away, I would do something else to her. And then there's a ridiculous cartoon next to it that's like, and if you take my other appendages away, I'll bite her to death. And I can just remember being like in agony on the toilet at like age 9 and just being like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like the history was real people, and the like comedy in it, and the ridiculous shit that people used to say
Mhm.
like 600 years ago, and
Mm.
just that being one of those things to me that just been like, yeah, this is. But also I definitely have another memory of being 12 and my history teacher, like me sitting in class working on something, and my history teacher coming over and saying something like, "Oh, you're really good at this." I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
"Fucking A, let's go."
Yeah.
Finally some praise. The
I
one
mean,
thing my poor troubled childhood had been looking for.
for me, it's like I don't know really what was the thing that like set it all off. But I distinctly remember on a Sunday night watching Time Team with my dad and watching them dig up like stuff and me being like fascinated that they've like pulled a vase out of the middle of a field somewhere. So like that was like fascinating, but also social history as well. Like I love going to the types of museums, that are like a living museum where you can go around like high streets and stuff and people are dressed up and
That must be a nightmare for you. It's all cobbled
it is
floors
a nightmare,
everywhere.
but they've got like fish and chip shops and stuff that like do old fashioned fish and chips. I'm like, take me there, please. I'll sit here. Yeah, so going to places like that. Well, I went to one in where was it? Manchester, not long ago actually, with my friend. My mum and my friend went to this. Like they said, it was a living museum. It was just like basically a street where it was being knocked down, and the museum took it and put it in this museum, basically, and rebuilt it inside this museum. But in the window of the chemist shop, I don't know whether I mentioned this to you before, Daisy, but they've got a sign saying "New in today, invalid Bovril." And I was like, "Hang on, what the hell is invalid Bovril?" I actually
Is
googled
that
it.
Bovril made out of invalids?
It was
I think they
Bovril
usually
for
use beef.
invalids.
It's the special cure-all.
It was, but yeah, basically it was like if you were feeling weak, it was unflavored
Pour some
Bovril.
gravy on it.
Exactly. I put a post on Instagram. I was like, "That's where I'm going wrong. That's why my legs don't work. I've not had
Yeah.
enough Bovril." just like stuff like that. And I'm like, that fascinates me that they thought, oh yeah, what's wrong with her? Give her some Bovril, she'll be fine.
Do you think they do a veggie one, or shall I just get some Marmite and smear that on my eyes instead?
Try Marmite. I would, I think, but it just made me like I couldn't get over it. I was like, I think I need that up in my bedroom on my bedroom wall. So stuff like that. And like how depictions of disability over the years. So like, what's that painter's name? Lowry. And he does the cripples. And they were like, they've got a sign next to it that said, the name of this painting is now seen as like very offensive. We don't use the word cripples anymore in everyday language. And
Someone
I'm like,
needs to tell my aunt that.
and I was
some of us do.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and my husband were pulled in. Where were we park? We were pulled into a little services or something the other day, and we were looking for somewhere to park. Anyway, God, all the Crips are out today. We're gonna have to park in parent and child like peasants. I went, you can't say that. I was like, I can say that.
We can
You
say
can't
it.
say
You
that.
can't say that. Yeah, leave us alone. But I was like, but I just stood looking at this painting for ages, going, I love this painting. This painting is ace. Because it was like all different types of disability. And everybody was like, oh yeah, not many people like it. I was like, who doesn't like this painting? What is wrong with them? They're like people who are too frightened to say anything or express themselves.
Well, and it just goes to show, it's like, how often have you seen yourself represented in art?
Exactly, yeah, exactly that, I think. I mean, not that I look like something out of a Lowry painting, but it is that kind of, oh my God, I couldn't stop looking at it. It was ace. And it's just like, so when I see things like that from a historical period where you think, like the Invalid Bovril, I never knew that existed. I googled it and managed to find a PDF from the Victorian era, and it was a catalogue of things you could buy for your corner shop. I was like, no, it was a thing. So they're not just taking the piss. That did actually exist. It's just things like that. I just think, wow, this is amazing. This is why I love history.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. I did also have very good history teachers who somehow made even, some of the really, really dry stuff interesting. Like from, like my year group of people, I think there were a good like 10 who went and studied history
that's a sign,
afterwards, which, considering it was like a comparatively small school, I think there was like, I don't actually know now, maybe like 100-ish, just over 100 people per year, maybe like 120.
Right. Okay.
So that's a good amount.
Yeah, that is, isn't it? I do think that, like,
I need to track down where they live and throw my book at them. Like, see, this is your fault.
It's all you're doing.
Yeah.
Giving away free books, Stacey. What you do is you get your publishers to put them in the acknowledgements, and then write to them and be like, "You're in my acknowledgements. Here's where you can buy my book for $19.99."
Unfortunately, I already wrote my acknowledgements. It's just every single pub that I went to while I was writing it.
Of course it is. I wouldn't expect anything else. But
I took up so much of their table space while I was doing that.
And you're like, I'm really sorry, I'll put your name in the acknowledgements.
No.
Amazing. That is probably the one thing I would really struggle with, the writing the acknowledgements. The acknowledgements would probably be twice as thick as the book, because I'd be like, and I'd like to thank.
And she'd get upset doing it.
I would.
Because Lucy always gets a bit emotional when she's talking about how helpful people have been and the people that she loves.
Yeah, this was one of the reasons for just going straight for the pub names, is that this way I don't need to worry about, like, have I forgotten someone? Have I missed out someone?
Oh, yeah. Like, my Oscars acceptance speech is absolutely just going to be an opportunity to be super political and not worry about not having thanked my great aunt Gertrude or whatever.
When your book gets really big, though, Daisy, which I'm sure it will, they'll be able to, like, do Daisy Holder pub crawls, like, of all the pubs you've mentioned in the book.
God, people will die. There's like 25.
I was going to say, you did it over an extended period.
Yeah.
But like,
one a day.
Like, chapter 1 was written here, chapter 2 was written here, and then you could, like, do readings of the chapters in each I should be in marketing.
It's funny that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to go up a massive hill for at least one of them, though.
Oh no. Well, I'll just sit at the bottom and shout then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would do. That's what I would do if I was you. I'd build a pub crawl and just flog your book at the end of it.
I mean, I'll probably be going to all of those pubs again some
Yeah.
point soon.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Just leave a
Yeah.
leaflet at each one.
Which was the hardest chapter to write? Like, and why? Was it
Alice
because
is
it was hard to
desperately
research?
trying
or-
to keep us on track here.
Yeah, I'm just interested. Like I was gonna make a joke about how, you know, chapter 7 is really bad because you were drunk when you were writing it, and then I was like, actually, I have a genuine question.
It's
You
tricky.
weren't lying when you said you hadn't prepared, were you?
But yeah. I forgot. You should see my calendar for the next couple, like these last few weeks. It's just insanity. Yeah, some of them were difficult just because, you know, the topics are unpleasant and it's
Yeah.
difficult to write that in an entertaining way
Yeah.
without it seeming flippant.
Yes.
So, you know, like the bit about conversion therapy and the bit about, you know, like AIDS activism and things like that is just sort of, you know, sad, and there's no real way around that.
You can't sort of do a unique brand of Daisy Holder humour, can you, and go,
Yeah.
but it was all right because this, yeah.
Yeah, and there are other things that were difficult just because there's not all that much information about them.
You definitely don't have the same flexibility as on the podcast where you can just go, huh?
Yeah.
Let me
I
Google
can't
that.
just write, I don't know.
Because
So yeah, there are just some things where we just don't know an awful lot about people. There's, you know, one I cover, Bobby Lee Bennett, who's really, really fascinating. So she was the first person to have her gender reassignment surgery paid for by the kind of public medical disability benefit in America.
Wow.
Because there had been a lot of you know, campaigning for that surgery to be covered, but it required everybody, well, not everybody, the courts and the medical professionals to consider being trans in itself as a disability, so that was a necessary medical
that was
thing.
the reason why. Yeah.
Whereas Bobby was already disabled, and so all of her medical treatment was already paid for by that benefit, so the only thing the court had to consider was whether it was a necessary medical treatment, which they deemed it was. And yeah, with kind of the first instance of that, so it's a really, really fascinating story. But there's very little other information about the rest of her life.
Yes.
There's kind of, you know, because that was kind of the big the big event that she was known for. There's kind of
somebody that I want to cover who anybody who listens to true crime will know about, called Mary Vincent, who was the victim of a horrific attack. And there's so much information about the attack, which she survived. But there's no, and it just says, oh, and she went on to work in activism. It's like she was 15 or something when the attack happened. She lived well into her like 70s. What did she do for the other 50 years of her life? But it's exactly that. It's there's nothing. There's no.
It's like a career defining thing, and that's the only thing that anybody knows about, really.
Yeah. So yeah, the only information we really have about Bobby is when, you know, various magazines who were covering her her kind of, you know, fight to get this paid for, so you know, interviewed her and talked about it. And then there was a brief mention in a newspaper like 10 years later when she had a baby with her husband. And yeah, other than that, it's very much kind of, you know, fill in the gaps. But
so what do you do, Daisy, when you've got a situation where you've got information on a person, but it's not enough for a full chapter? Do you try and, I mean, how do you work around that, or do they just get discounted because it's like a page and a half, or you know?
Well, so the way that the book is structured is that the kind of each chapter sort of follows a particular figure, but it's not entirely about them. So,
Right.
you know, Bobby Lee Bennett's chapter also goes into, you know, the history of gender affirming care and gender recognition centres and
Yeah.
not gender identity services and things like that. And so, you know, there's always another topic that you can cover, and you know, a lot of them fit in with a lot of people.
But I guess
Yeah.
we're never going to get a hour's history lesson out of Bobby Lee Bennett because sadly the content isn't there.
Yeah. This thing is, it's much easier to do it in the, you know, format that I'm using in the book, because it's it's specifically almost designed. But the figures are kind of you know, they're people that you're kind of studying, but they're also like a framing device for a bunch of the other topics.
Yeah, which is a good way round, I suppose.
Yeah, it worked out well for me.
It's worked out well for you.
as a workaround for why did nobody else ask Robbie anything.
I did say, Daisy, before we started recording this, when you publicised that you got a book coming out, I mean, we've known for quite a while that you're writing a book, but I just haven't been able to say anything really. But so when you publicised the fact that you were writing this book, and I read the synopsis, and then I read about the author bit, and there was such a swell of pride. I'm going to go upset. There was such a swell of
I told you.
I can't help it. But there was such a swell of pride of, that's what, you know, I know them, and I just thought that is an amazing thing to do. I mean, I wish I could write a book. I don't think I have the concentration span. I don't think I am A, that interesting, or I am B, that interested in anything to go, here is a book on a subject I like. So, you know, I am in awe of you. I think it's an amazing thing to do, and I know that this will help people out there who are disabled and who are queer and maybe don't feel recognized in, you know, either in society really, because I mean, we always talk about, you know, not being sort of seen as disabled people reflected in our society. I can't imagine what it's like to be of, you know,
when you narrow that identity down even further,
where you think, oh, that's another barrier where people, you know, don't want to be, you know, don't want to talk about, you know, this area of my life. I think it's going to help so many people that you might just think, oh, it's only a little book that I've written, but I do genuinely feel like it's going to help people go, actually, I feel seen, and I feel like, you know, this is who I am. It's just an amazing thing to do. You should be very, very proud of yourself, Daisy.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice, and I'm very deeply uncomfortable with all this praise.
Yeah, I know. I would be too, but you're gonna hear it anyway. If you want me to write like the quote on the back of the book, give me a shout.
So, Daisy, where can people find your book?
Well, as it turns out, in a lot of places.
Exciting.
So you can get it directly from the publisher's website, which is Pen and Sword Books. It's also on Amazon, on the Waterstones website, a bunch of book repositories abroad. We've found, you know, websites of Sweden and Australia, and is it kind of anywhere that you would buy
when
a
you
book?
can't sleep? Just googling where can you buy your own
just
book?
going on a book tour like round the world.
No, far from it. I saw the thing and immediately closed the laptop because I was already uncomfortable. As other people looked it up and told me.
No, I understand that though, Daisy, because I know what it's. I am not very good at accepting praise. I'm like, oh, shut up! Like when anybody says anything nice. So yeah, I get it. I get it.
And how long is it going to take me to convince you to read the audiobook version, even if it's just to me?
Yes,
This is
we should do that. We should do like a live read along.
Yeah. I mean, if you could, that would solve a lot of problems for me. I was looking
Yeah.
into what it would take to produce an audiobook, and as it turns out, lots of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of money.
But, you know, if you read it on the recording platform that we've already paid for.
Yeah.
This...
That's
Yeah.
one way around it.
One long lump.
Yeah, it's like, it might not be particularly well, because, you know, sometimes I'll just sort of lean back from the microphone slightly and I'll get a drink.
Hang on.
Yeah, I was going to say, get up a regular bathroom break.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fine. Daisy, that's not our problem. That's Adam's problem.
You're giving Adam more work to do. He's
Yeah,
like, hang on
yeah.
a minute. I'm not signed up for this. I'm not an audiobook editor.
Yeah, congratulations on your promotion to audiobook producer.
Oh,
Okay, awesome. Well, that's season 2 sorted out.
Yeah.
In the meantime, what have we got coming up on our first season, Lucy? We've already mentioned a history lesson
A
about
history
all about
lesson?
Ian Jury.
We are talking to a local radio host in Cornwall, Ross Lannon, who, unbeknownst to me, after he'd been on the episode of the lABLEd podcast, he was then on Tipping Point a week later, and he never said anything. So we're talking to him about representation in the media, and how he uses his radio show to sort of interweave disability issues into what he talks about. What else have we got? We
We've
have
got some good bonus stuff coming up.
extremely good bonus content. Yes, we've worked really hard on that, and we're talking to Chloe Hammond, who is what people believe is the UK's first registered nurse who uses a wheelchair. So that's fascinating.
It's not that she uses both a wheelchair and a service dog.
That's the one.
That's
See?
it. She's got
I'm very
awesome,
tired.
awesome little dog called Ocho.
Yes.
And me and Emma, our fantastic guest volunteer organisee person, we're doing a new sort of spin-off series that is the Blind Book Club, where we're reviewing books by disabled authors, which is that was really fun. Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff.
We've got a lot of stuff. We're currently in the middle of just tying all the loose ends before go time. So yes, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. But
by the time you hear this, we will be in a massive flap and trying to get everything sorted. But you won't know anything about it because you're out there just listening to the final product.
Yes, but it's very nice to be back, and it's very nice to be able to have that breathing space to dedicate more time to like make the bonus content more exciting and really put some thought and plans into our episodes rather than like panic constantly about the podcast, because hopefully this way round we'll be a bit more relaxed, chilled out about stuff. So but yes, it's something I'm looking forward to.
So if you want to hear all the bonus content that we've talked about, head over to our website and sign up to our newsletter, because that's where you will get all of our bonus stuff. We're doing a mix of audio and video and written content, so it'll all be there for you to access. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, tell all of your friends about it and share it on all of the social media places, because that helps us find new listeners. Daisy, do you want to tell people where they can find you on the internet now that you're unbanned from Instagram?
Yeah.
Or until you're next banned by Instagram?
Yeah, so Disability History Snapshots on Instagram, and either Daisy Holder or Holder Daisy, depending on what time I joined the various platforms on, you know, the old-fashioned Twitter and Threads and Blue Sky. I think I'm on Mastodon, probably. Is that still a thing?
I don't know.
Nobody
knows. Always confuses me. I don't know. We'll put all the links to your socials though on the show notes for this episode, so people can find you in one fell swoop if they want to hear more.
You can find us on YouTube now.
Yes, you can.
Something exciting we've done since we finished. Since we took our break, which is very exciting. So you can go if you are one of those cool young people who YouTube podcasts,
Hey,
We are there.
You don't actually see our faces though, because me and Alice both agreed when we started this project that video podcast is not for us, because we don't want to be having to wear makeup when we record podcasts.
I'm not convinced I've brushed my hair today.
No, I'm not
pretty
sure either. Look, you can see like bird's nest.
Pretty sure I just twisted it into a clip and went, future Alice can worry about that.
What if I use your YouTube channel to do CBBS bedtime stories of my own?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yes.
Who needs an audiobook? It's just a video of me sitting by a fire.
Talking shit
Reading a
about the
book
very
to
hungry
you.
caterpillar.
Yeah, the hairy caterpillar, the hungry caterpillar is wasteful.
Hungry caterpillar, fucking idiot.
There we
Right,
go.
well, I think
Book one.
we've certainly got some bonus content coming your way soon, everybody. Although I do feel like we make those promises quite a lot, and we perhaps need to have somewhere where we write down things we've said we'll do.
Yes. Don't worry, I've got a
but-
notepad. It's fine. We'll sort it.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Yeah, I
First
think
episode
so.
over.
In the can.
And we'll see you all next week for something completely different. Bye bye.
Ta-ra.
Shh, don't wake Tora. Thanks for listening to the lABLEd podcast. If you like the show, you can rate, review, and subscribe, and you can follow us on social media at lABLEdPod.
This episode was edited by Adam Hall. Our music was by Maisie Crunden, and we'd like to thank the rest of the team involved.